Okay, so we are going to begin. Welcome everyone to your Future Leaders call number, still not too sure, 30-ish maybe. This week is not a crypto call. This week is all about growth and development and looking at things. So we put it out there to everyone this week. I had a couple of questions, but we had our resident old school dude who's been in for a while, Alan, who's with us as well, but he has had a bit of a busy day today and he's on with a few things. So I'm just going to read out what his question was, because I said, what do people love to discuss? And this is going to be the general topic. For a couple of you who are new, there's no real formats to anything. We just allow a bit of space to open up whatever needs to be discussed. You can I've got everyone on screen now. I didn't last week. Kind of just raise your hand if there's bits you want to come in on. There's no right or wrong answers. There's nothing that can't be shared or can't be said. All that we ask is you respect everyone's views, and fundamentally, we are practicing collective sense making on things, which is where we all pool together our thoughts to try and find that signal that's amidst all of the noise. So Alan began with, how does one look after one's own emotions, own resources, so that one has a full cup from which to give to others without veering into selfishness? How do you stay on the right side of that line? Tips for keeping the balance. One cannot give from an empty cup, but we know that in the past, wealth and power have corrupted people. I'm just going to bold that. So how to avoid this, or even better, how to flip it so that you are a net asset to your fellow beings and the planet, rather than a hoarder of wealth whilst others go poor. How do you do this while empowering others rather than patronizing or controlling them? I'd love to just double check. Alan, did you want patronizing, or did you want like patriarchy? Being a man, I'm just wondering if
I think I did mean patronizing. You know, what I meant by that is the powers that be, or the people with the greatest wealth and power, telling others what to do, how to live their life in a way that can be quite patronizing.
Yeah, I understand that. Coming from a righteousness perspective.
Yeah, so whether it's governments, non-governmental organizations, Rockefeller foundations, whatever it might be, let's say, telling other people how to live their lives in a way that can be quite patronizing, saying, we know best, you, the great massive population, don't know, and we've got the power, so you know what, you're going to have to do as we say. That's what I meant by patronizing.
Okay, so I suppose at the end of that is like, who has the right to tell anyone how to live? And then it asks the question, is there a right way to live? Is there such a thing? So there's a few things in this. It's a really good question, Alan. Thank you for sharing that. Feel free to come in when you can. I do appreciate that you've got other stuff on as well, so don't worry about it too much. There's enough of us here who I'm sure have got some solid views on all of this, but there's actually quite a few bits. So I'm just going to break this down a bit. How does one look after, how do you balance your own resources so you have a full cup from which to give to others without veering into selfishness? How do you stay on the right side of that? Tips for keeping balance, because we can't give from an empty cup. But we know that in the past, wealth and power have corrupted people. Definitely want to expand on that. How do we avoid this? Or even better, how do we flip it so that you are a net asset to your fellow beings and the planet rather than a hoarder of wealth? I'm just trying to see if that's a different question than the beginning. How do you look after your own resources so you have a full cup from which to give without veering into selfishness? Okay, it's similar. Okay, so there's plenty to go at here. There are 2, 4, 6, 9 of us. Someone else, their eyes get a bit funny when you see a long line and you're trying to count people. There's 9 of us, so that's 9 beautiful people's thoughts. I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to actually just open up. Who would like to cast the first perspective and opinion on Alan's question? Don't be shy. I'll go if not. Paul, Mr. Cudgington, pearls of wisdom, sir.
It's not necessarily a perspective, but actually I was having exactly the same conversation with colleagues at work, because we do a reflective practice sort of session, like peer support group, and I was facilitating that one today. And it's been kind of a bit of a hot topic amongst the team, because I work for an adult education charity, and we have a centre in Manchester, so all of our group sessions and everything's usually all done there. But during lockdown, obviously we're all working from home, so the whole focus of the business kind of shifted, and we were given like a caseload of learners to contact, and those calls sort of really became quite consuming, and became quite emotionally draining, quite stressful, and I think the workforce, the colleagues, kind of probably took on too much. We took on more than what we really should have done. Our whole business, sort of our whole service model just changed overnight. And that was, so yeah, we've been discussing this quite a bit actually, about, if all your energy is being taken up by trying to help others, are you actually being effective if you're not looking after yourself and you're in a good place yourself? How effective can you actually be in order to offer that support to others? So yeah, it's funny how Alan's question came around about 20 minutes before my peer support session. So I was like, oh, that's perfect timing. So I'm really interested to kind of get some sort of tips and sort of ideas as to
you can do,
that I can kind of take back to my colleagues, and because it's a tough question, because obviously I understand from our point of view as a charity, in terms of, we want to stay in touch with the people that we work with. We want to support them the best as we can. Yet we were doing and offering something that is not what we do. It's not what we were trained to do. But the services that should have been around doing those things weren't available. So were we right in doing it? But without having the tools in place for the staff to manage that extra expectation. It's a really tough question, because I understand why we did it, and it was in many ways it was the right thing to do, but we didn't have the tools to manage the stress, the anxiety that came with that, and the added pressure that came with that, really.
Okay, I've got a question for you. Before we do that, I am going to take a picture in 3, in 2, in 1. Smile. Perfect. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to come to Andy in a minute, but I've got a quick question for you, Paul. Snapshot question. Yeah. You're talking about, with what you're talking about there, like energy, like basically, like if you're depleted, if you can't look after yourself, you literally physically can't help people. Can you hoard personal energy like you can hoard wealth?
That's a good question. It depends. Are you looking at it from a case in terms of hoarding it in order to not put it to any use?
I think what I'm coming to is like, because when Alan first posed the question, my brain went to where your brain went to, like when thinking about helping others, which depletes us, energetically. But the more I've gone into Alan's question, I feel like where he was originally coming from is around, is more around the traditional side of wealth. Like when we look think about power, and we think about wealth and those that have got that control, those that have got power, wealth usually kind of goes hand in hand, and it's how do you accumulate wealth whilst giving, knowing that people have not got. And I just wondered if there is a parallel. Can they be the same? It's quite clear that you at least, well, we'll open it up, that you can hoard money or wealth and not share that. And I wondered, can you do the same with energy, with your own beingness? Can you be selfish just around who you physically choose to just help, money aside?
I'll probably have to meditate on that for 3 days.
That's fair enough. I understand. That's cool. We're going to come to,
You know where to start.
we'll move. Thank you very much for beginning it off anyway. We're going to move across to Andy then. Go on, Andy. What are your thoughts on that?
It's just a similar nature. When I had a lot of spare time, I decided to do a lot of voluntary work and spread my time across 3 different charities. One was Age Concern, which is now under the umbrella of Age UK, the domestic abuse, and the other one was Missing Persons. So I know I ended up getting to the point where I was just burnt out. I just shut myself away for weeks on end. I couldn't face the world or anything. It was just all my energy, the emotional side. It's not just the physical energy, but it's all the other aspects of energy, the spiritual, the emotional, and everything, that the toil that it takes on your whole being, your well-being, it's just phenomenal. And I was trying to help them out financially as well, and it was as though the more that they accepted financially, it was never enough. So you're just constantly giving financially, emotionally, physically, absolutely everything, and like I said, you just end up in a point where you just burn out. So you have to find a balance. Literally just schedule a couple of hours every week with each one, rather than just devoting more and more time. You just have to learn to say the word no at some point.
So you're talking about boundaries there.
Yeah.
So because there's 2 things that came up. One's about boundaries. The other one is how much of an impact does the other person, and that could be in your instance, it was an organization. How
individuals
much,
as well?
Well, it's individuals, but I would imagine that the organization has an air about it, an energy about it. And at the same time, the people that work for it for longer will probably take on a lot of that, because if you think about culture in a business, they go hand in hand, the people that work there and the organization itself. And I don't think a third sector is any different. So when it comes to helping people, whether it's through wealth or whether it's through physically offering your time and your energy, how much do you think you need to be aware of where that organization or people are already at? Because when you got to that third sector organization, you said it was Age Concern, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would it be fair to say they were desperate for help and for money when you arrived and were still in the same position when you left?
Yeah, it's just non-stop. It's just that there's always a finite amount of resource that they're capable of, and as more and more people over the age of 60, there are more people living longer, so that there's more demand on those resources.
Okay, so from a boundaries perspective, because one of the things that has come up on the question is like, what do we do about it? How did you go about putting up those boundaries?
It took a lot of soul searching, because I'm not the type of person that I don't like letting people down. So I got to the point where I literally had to say, look, enough's enough. This is how much I can give. And once I'm at that level, then that's it. I can only do so many hours per week, so much money I support a lot of other charities financially as well. So I can't, there's so many charities that I'd love to be able to help out, but I'm just physically and financially not able to as much as I'd love to. Just
to ask everyone else on the call that's got their videos on, and if you don't, you can press the thumbs up button, who has, I'm not going to say an issue with boundaries, but who's found it difficult in the past to put up a boundary between something? Okay. And I'm going to be really honest here. I only discovered what a boundary was 2 years ago. And I only found out because someone on this call said to me, with a client that we were engaging with, this person said, you need to be careful of boundaries with this client. And I said, and I got off the call, and I remember thinking to myself, what's a boundary? And it was only after working with that client for a small period of time, and I could feel them, I don't want to say leech, but it's that energy of just vampiric unconscious, just needing of something, that I can honestly say I discovered what a boundary was. So we're all pretty much in the same ballpark. And what are you asking? Sorry, Andy.
No, it's okay. I was just
Oh,
asking
sorry.
what that
yeah,
book
right.
called,
Okay.
yeah, but it don't
I
matter.
thought you were asking what the client was called. I was like, oh, I can't really tell you that.
No.
Cool. Okay. So, so we've got boundaries then that need to be made. Do you think now that you did that and you went through that experience, do you think moving forward, if you were working with third sector or anybody that needs something, do you think you'd be more aware of those boundaries in advance after having that experience?
Definitely, because I know exactly where I've reached a certain point or a level that I think, right, okay, I need to step back now and take a bit of time to top up my cup. You know?
Okay. So anybody want to say something on that before we move on to a different bit? Is that John putting your hand up?
Yeah,
you're waving your pen.
Waving my pen. Yes, I was lazy.
Go on, John.
It's funny you should ask, but I've been making a few notes. There's a lot to this, and you could spend a few weeks on this. Never mind an hour. One thing that you probably don't want to get into, but it's a very big balance, universal basic income and all that kind of stuff, in terms of should society be providing us with the freedom and support to do what we want to do to be effective, and not punishing us financially for trying to do that. You might even get to the point where if you work for a charity, the government pays for it if it's valued. That will, or society, it might be a better way to say that. I saw a teacher that was a student of Osho lots of years ago. She should say, you need to find what makes your heart sing. And then if you can earn the money from it, if you find your passion like that, then it's not so hard work and you can probably do more of it than if it was something that you're not doing. Coincidentally, I've been talking to a friend, which is very relevant to this in terms of the financial aspects of it. This guy used to be very senior in HSBC, and about 10 years he came out in despair at the way that the banks treat customers. But he's aiming to launch a service which is going to help people plan their financial lives, but let them take control of it, as opposed to the financial advisors ripping you off all the time, which he says they're terrible at. And so that's going to be a service which is going to be quite cheap, relatively, but it lets you plot your whole life out. So, of course, you've got the short-term question, have I got enough money today? But you've also got to think about, well, what happens when I retire? Or when I'm too old to work? How do I balance all of that? That starts to get really complicated. Do I need to put money aside? So what's my long-term energy look like?
Just to ask you one question on that, John, then, because earlier you were like, when you start talking about universal basic income and we start talking about if a service is very good for the people, should the government pay for it? Which effectively is like mild forms of socialism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does capitalism, and I don't want to move, last time we talked a lot about different systems other than capitalism, but does the fact that we even have capitalism mean that as I'm going to say a negative byproduct, we have lack of in areas where there isn't a capitalism thing serving society, that then forces us to have third sector? Is third sector a byproduct, a non-supportive byproduct of having capitalism, in your opinion?
I'd have to think that through. That's quite complicated.
Fair enough.
Even if you're in a socialist world where everybody gets a universal basic income, it's very hard to get that exactly right and for it to support everybody properly. And you might still find that there was a need for, some people need extra support at different times, and some people might want to raise money for other things. So it's hard to imagine a perfect socialist system as well that would get rid of that altogether.
Okay, I would agree with that. I mean, you're talking about a utopian answer, and I think this brings us on to another point of what Alan brought up, and he wrote, we know that in the past, wealth and power have corrupted people. So how do we avoid this? And There's something in that sentence, because it's a loaded sentence as well. And whilst I inherently agree with it, I also feel a part of me that wants to disagree with it. Like, the past has definitely shown us that wealth and power, that there are corrupted people who are aligned with wealth and power. But does wealth and power corrupt? Can one have wealth and power? Because if you think about it, Alan's whole question is around, how do I have lots of resources, whether it's energetic resources, spiritual resources, time, money, doesn't matter. How do I have lots of something whilst at the same time being a value add to those who don't? Which basically means the ability to have these things and not be corrupted. So can one have wealth and power? And power is an incredibly subjective term, of course. Can you have that, whatever power might mean in your world, and not be corrupted? And if so, what is the thing that would enable you to do that?
I mean, the first question is it actually make sense? Well, could we end up with a world where wealth and power don't make sense anymore? If everybody's got a basic income that they're comfortable with, why would anybody need wealth? And
well, why do people want wealth now?
Well, we've got a financial system that works like that with capitalism, haven't we? Maybe we can envisage a society where there wasn't extreme wealth and power.
Is that because we reward those who have wealth? Christina?
I think it's a byproduct, the rewarding of wealth and power. It's like,
hang on 1 second. It's a byproduct of wealth and power is the reward.
Automatically, like, it's not even necessarily that other individuals have to reward somebody with wealth and power. The fact that you have wealth and power, the fact that you have that abundance, just allows you to live a life that the more wealth and abundance you have, the more experiences you can have, the more stuff you can have, the more that you can buy yourself an island and have your own private space of an entire island, if you're talking that levels of wealth and abundance. So I think it's just a byproduct, but I don't necessarily think they're hand in hand. I don't think that you are naturally greedy and selfish if you have wealth and power. I think that you can very comfortably have a lot of wealth and power. And I think there's many people in the world that do have wealth and power and are altruistic and give a lot to society and do good with their wealth and their power.
So what's the difference between those people who have wealth and some form of power relative to where they are and to those who don't have power? What's the difference between those people who, we're just going to use the word philanthropic just to give a label for now? What's the difference between those and those that don't?
Are we talking about wealthy people that don't and wealthy people that do?
People that have got this. So we're just going to keep things quite binary for now. You've got wealth and power on either side, but one side is a value add to society and one side's not. Why? Because I'm going back to the origin of the whole point what Alan's bringing up, which is, how do I have resources? And then therefore, as soon as you've got resources, you do have a certain amount of power over those that don't. It's relative, of course. But so how does one have that and not move into selfishness, which I'm going to link with becoming corrupted people?
I think it's...
Richard, I'll come to you in a sec.
I think it's, for me, it's that level of, if you have a desire for another to be in their fullest power, expression, whatever it might be, and you do that through empowering that individual, then that, for me, it comes back to sovereignty. If you're supporting people to step into their own sovereignty, it comes back to, like, don't buy fish for the village, buy them rods so they can get their own food and teach them how to fish, right? It's like empowering people to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And I just feel like those that are truly coming from that space of philanthropy, as we were calling it, they're holding that vision that others have the potential for greatness, maybe.
Okay,
and
I like that.
they are using their position of power to be able to bring more of that to the world. So allowing them to step more into their sovereignty, allowing them to encouraging equality and working with, you know, it's kind of like this vision for the world and what the potential is, and allowing and using their position of wealth, of power, of whatever it might be, their resources, whether or not they're energetic, whether they're spiritual practices, whether they're wealth, whether they're whatever it might be, that they have an abundance of those resources. They're using their position of wisdom to be able to empower others to step into that space.
So what I'm really taking from that there is that, because I want to always make sure this whole conversation we're moving into some sort of not actions but points that everyone can take note of. So what to summarize that is, and it can be tidied, of course, because it begins with something about, being about the empowerment of others. If you can hold that within your beingness of who you are whilst accumulating resources of wealth, then in theory you will at least be more towards a value add to others.
For me, definitely, because if you're teaching people to be reliant on you, that is not actually that altruistic. Like, you're just in service to self in a whole new way.
Yep, I like that. So another way of defining it is what's the opposite, which is this stops teaching people to be reliant on you, because you could argue that reliance gives you the power.
Yes.
Okay.
Whether that's spiritual teachings, whether that's wealth, whether that's, you know, you need to keep on coming back and buying my programs, whatever it might be.
Or you're going to come
Instead
to
of
me for your
inspiring-
wage, or I'm in control of the water, or I give out the jobs, all of these things.
Yeah, it's like
Nice.
it's like this kind of we were talking about the other day. It's like, at what point did we as human beings, what point was it decided that we needed to be protected and that we needed to be taken care of by the government? Like, at what point was that decided? It's like, we're all, and I get it, it's because we're trying to make a society work and not everybody's at the right level of thinking, that people aren't considerate of others, and I get it, all of it, but actually the government should be working to empower people so that we are a cohesive community, not to be controlled, but to be in working together. And I feel like that's lost, certainly lost at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And that was the latter part when Richard Alan shared at the beginning of this, which is like the powers that be telling others what to do, whoever that might be. So that's really, really good. I want to come down to Richard, who we might have moved on for what you want to say. Richard, if you want to backtrack a bit, that's fine. But what's your takes on this so far?
I think it's interesting, reflecting on what Christina's just said in terms of the individual, because at any stage, it's like the individual is always going to be at a certain level, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? In themselves, whether they take or whether they give. And I think what I was going to sort of chip in was when we were talking about sort of what level of business or level of wealth do they give, or are they coming from a place of greed? And I think like capitalism gets quite a bit of a, it can be tarnished with become quite a dirty sort of word and a subject. But I think fundamentally, if we actually look at capitalism in its like purest form, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think this subject, we spoke about it before, but the book Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein is exactly about this subject, really, and sort of really delving deep into what is money for, what was it originally intended for, and how has it been co-opted and corrupted. Because I think you were making a point, is we're talking about value, and I think if as an and it was off spanning off actually the subject about universal basic income, where, well, if everyone has universal basic income, then we don't have this sort of problem of greed and wealth. But I think that if you give that money to that individual, what are they're not going to change their mindset. It might over time, I think, in terms of like, being able to, move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you're not just trying to scrape a living or anything. But I think I do wonder, something innate in the human nature that you want to create something and you want to create value, and some people can do it and some people can't, and that's always the thing where people need empowering, right? But fundamentally, if people are creating value, then that's how they get rewarded. And at the point that they get rewarded for it, like you said, it was a byproduct, Christina, if they are coming from an innovation mindset, they're potentially more likely to have the mindset of being able to sort of share things at sort of that level and want to sort of change humanity for the better. So they've created value and they've been rewarded for it. But it's always going to be at the point which people are, whether it's how do they think about money, how do they think about wealth, and how do they think about giving time, energy, all those different things. If they're got psychological, issues or whatever it might be, trauma or whatever, they can't, until they've wrapped that round, they're not in a place to sort of give. So it doesn't matter whether you're, someone on universal basic income or Elon Musk. If your mind is not at a certain place, you're always going to be stuck at the same place. And I can't help but think, if you look at the two extremes, it's you've got someone that creates value and moves into a philanthropic,
direction.
Yeah, and then you've got, like, say, bankers at the other extreme, using a really extreme example where they don't create any value, they're not doing anything good. So there's nothing they can't, in their head, all they're doing is creating more money, and that's the game, right? And so you just got their mindset. They're come the same two levels of wealth, but they just can't. There's something fundamentally for those individuals where they can't move past.
I've got two things I'd like to just bring into this bit then. The first one is around, at some point, I want to bring in the word consciousness, because I'm just wondering if one of the things I always like to think of consciousness as awareness. And what you talk, and it's wrong to just label all the bankers to say they're not conscious and not got awareness, because that's like saying someone that's in business doesn't have awareness. Of course they do, but we're going to take the general finance industry as a whole, just for this as an example, who might say that they're not as aware of the repercussions of that industry. And the reason I want to bring that up is because the other point here, when you're talking about value, so people create value, then they get rewarded. And it's Daniel Smachtenberg that got me onto this bit, that we don't place any value on the whale being alive. There is no value in our system. And I agree that there's nothing wrong with, I don't think there's anything wrong with capitalism, with socialism, with all of these different ways that we can live. On paper, even democracy on paper should be perfect. But the reality is something gets wrong, something gets skewed when we actually do it. And it usually is around power. And what I'm trying to bring up is, if our society put a value on these other things that the third sector deals with, the things that don't necessarily have a monetary gain, which is usually social benefit, would that, I'm going to say, help? And the reason, and where I want to link that to, is when Christina starts talking about philanthropy. Philanthropy is, my understanding of philanthropy is people that have made wealth and have resources and are choosing to funnel some of those resources towards social good that would otherwise not have any support. So these are people that are living in a capitalist world, but have got, in my opinion and my view, enough awareness, enough consciousness to see that they have resources, that they can see a lack that's not being supported, but they're choosing to funnel some of their resources there, knowing that their return, their value that they derive from that, is not quantifiable in money. It's quantifiable in, I'm going to call it some sort of social score, some sort of like heart coins. It ticks a box within us, within them, and within me, that makes me feel that is a good use of this crystallized time and effort that I've got over here. So is it just consciousness and awareness that's lacking between that world of people and the world over here that chooses not to do that, that does not place a value on helping those parts of society? Is that the main thing that's missing, or is there more, or is it not that at all?
I think there's more.
Okay.
I think there's more, because I think you're absolutely right to bring in consciousness, because I think that's ultimately the only issue we have is that we see ourselves as so separate. We haven't grasped that we are one unity consciousness on a big scale as of yet. It's coming. It feels like it's coming, but it feels like there's still this separation that I am better than. And I mean, what always gets me is, you know, like they say, if an alien came and looked and saw that we were okay, that somebody within our species was sleeping on the street eating out of a bin, like, how is that even possible that a species can be okay with that? And that's an extreme example, but it happens in every city and a lot of towns up and down the country, right? And I think that you can be a philanthropist and not necessarily have the conscious awareness, because it depends on where you're channeling that money. Like if you're still channeling that money into something that is entrapping people into a system and it isn't fully empowering them, then yeah, that's great. But it's just a band-aid. You're not actually solving a problem.
Is it fair to say that that person would be a surface level philanthropist then? So they may even feel like they are completely doing it for the right reasons, but because of lack of deeper awareness, actually are just contributing to a system that continues.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. And that's not knocking the heart, but it's just, you know, and like when we were talking about the filling your own cup at first, I think that's so underrated and so important actually. And you know, what I would love to see is within businesses, especially within third sector, is having like half an hour in the morning where you come together as a team to get into the right mindset and to do meditation together, and it just be something so that there is an energy put in as a team and as a group to really anchor yourselves into your center, so you can be coming from a space of, you know, from that space of unlimited resources. Like Angelita, you will know this, right? If you're actually working through spirit is working through you don't get tired. Like as a healer, whenever anyone that's a healer says, oh, I get so exhausted doing healings, that's because they're trying to heal. We're not the healers, we're just a conduit. And it's exactly the same whenever we're doing any work with anybody. It's like, if we can allow ourselves to get out of the way, but that needs cultivating, like reminding ourselves that we're just a channel needs cultivating. And I feel that gets really lost, particularly within third sectors, charities, that kind of thing, where it's needed so badly, but there's such slight resources that, you know. So yeah, I think consciousness is key. And I feel like that evolution that we're all going through, is the key to it all.
So to bring this back to where we began, bringing in what we've just covered in the last 5-10 minutes, which this last little section came about from, can you have wealth and power and not become corrupted? So what I'm taking from this is a reiteration about empowerment, that a key component to not becoming corrupted, and we're linking the word corrupted with not of benefit to everybody, because even corrupted is an incredibly corrupted from what? We're assuming that the base level, the baseline is a rising tide to lift all of humanity. We probably should have just got that clear to begin with, but I think there's an inferred assumption amongst us all that that's what that is. So then the empowerment of others is a key component, but then within that, is something around consciousness to be able to understand, is my impact actually helping? And the what's coming to my mind there is that whole thing around white privilege. Someone can go in with the absolute best intentions to help somebody, and to empower them. Someone once said to me, she's Angela, who's sometimes on these calls, and she said that intention is totally different from impact. And I was like, wow, it really got me thinking about that. How many times have I had the best intention, but my impact is net negative? And so there's a whole thing here that as my consciousness expands, as my awareness increases, I suddenly see that what was my good intention, coming from the right place in my heart, actually is non-supportive of this whole holistic system. And without that aspect of consciousness, I wouldn't have seen it. So to add into the actions within there is something around the consistent, not raising, I don't like raising of consciousness, development of my own consciousness to understand my own impact of my best willed intentions. Because without that, you could be thinking you're doing the best, but actually having a greater impact. So that leads us nicely into one of the latter parts of what Alan brought up, which is how do you do this whilst empowering others rather than patronizing or controlling them? And I wrote down a point here that, is this about them coming to you rather than you going to them? If someone, and there's two different questions here. The first one is, can you go to anybody who has not asked for help and help them? That's a direct question. I'd like to begin there. Is it ever right for you to go to someone else's world and offer help that has not asked for it? Open question. Angelita, have you unmuted yourself? Do you want to say something? Mm-hmm. Go for it.
Yeah, as somebody who does work in the third sector, the voluntary sector, whatever it's called, and has the experience of having more work, bizarrely, in the last 6 or 7 months than we've had in 3 years, which is completely crazy. But anyway, yeah, your question about can you go and help people, I would absolutely say no. We go in there with, as you said, best intentions, thinking that we know what's best for people. And we've done it with our projects. The very, very first one that we did, we got money and it was like, we're going to do this. We're going to help these people. They need this, da, 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 da. And we didn't quite get smacked in the face, but it was a real eye-opener to realize that what we thought they needed wasn't what they wanted. And that, I think, was the a real wake-up call and a real lesson for both of us. We thought we knew what they needed, but as I said, it wasn't what they wanted. They probably needed it. If you're looking, zooming out big picture, this is what they need,
they weren't ready,
but it's not what they want. And interesting, that's one of the things that a lot of people say about Runcorn, which is where I live, in the third sector. Interestingly, they say Runcorn needs a lot of stuff, but it doesn't want any of it. And so many organizations have, done that. Oh, here you are, have this, you need that. And it doesn't work. And something else that popped into my head when you were talking about intention and impact is a conversation I've had with somebody else about listening. Unless we listen, we will go charging in on our white horses with, everything. We're coming to rescue you for people who don't want to be rescued. They do, somewhere they have a desire to be empowered, but they certainly don't want to be rescued. It's not the same thing at all. But unless we listen, we'll never know what they want, what they need, or, what they want actually rather than need.
Can I then just pull that up a little bit there? So I absolutely agree. You know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. How do you listen? Is it right? Is there anything to listen to if no one has asked anything? So here's a group of people who you deem are in need, can level up, you know, you may even deem them to be a danger to themselves, which is an incredibly dangerous statement to make, and government makes it all the time. But you might look at it, it could be a friend, yeah, and they're in, let's say they're in a debt cycle, and you're sat and you've been in a debt cycle, you've come out of it, you've now accumulated wealth, you have your finances in order, therefore you are in a privileged position to be able to see that that friend is in financial difficulty, doesn't have the financial education or financial experience to self-help themselves, has not asked for help. So therefore, there's nothing for you to listen to because they aren't reaching out. In that situation, where, if at all, is it right for you to engage? Anyone else is welcome to put their hand up if they wish to jump in on this. Richard?
As somebody, sorry, Richard,
Sorry.
just going to say very quickly, as somebody who has waded in the past, I would say just don't.
Okay, that's cool.
You know, you have, yeah.
This is an existential question, by the way. There is no right answer other than the answer within which you choose. So, Richard, what's your thoughts?
I think from a organisational perspective, quite a lot of the time, the intention, like you say, Angelita, the intention is very, very good and it's always there. But people stop asking the questions of the people that are involved to find out what they really want. But I think you're right, Daniel. I think I'm thinking more from an individual perspective, where if someone doesn't ask, then they've got lots of reasons why they wouldn't ask for help, basically. And if you're not intuitive as an individual to sort of spot that and sort of say, well, this person needs help, then they're always going to they're never going to, like say, they're never going to be in a place where they can rise up and empower themselves, because people do need help, you know, to be empowered. So I think the only way you can kind of come at it is to ask questions. That's, to me, is always the best way. It's always like to ask questions of someone, and if they want the help, they'll take it. You know, you have to encourage them without trying to get without your ego being in the way and saying, I can solve your problem for you. You know, I've been through this problem and therefore I can solve this problem for you. It's like, well, no, it's asking questions so you really get an understanding of what that person really, really needs. And then they can choose to take it or not. And I think that's the thing. We can keep throwing, you know, breadcrumbs and things at people. If they don't bite, then they're not ready to take the next step. But I still feel the right thing to do is ask someone, do you need help with something, or do you need to just sense check some of this stuff, you know, and then you can do what you want from that point, you know.
You're basically saying there that you're offering an olive branch. In fact, no, an olive branch is saying I'll help you. That's wrong. So it's asking questions, listening to the answers without trying to fix them. Because if
that's really, really hard, you know, everyone will find that really hard, because I've had this problem, so therefore I can fix it for you. But everyone's circumstances are really.
If you're holding empowerment, so I'm going back to the actions that we've got, to the toolbox that we're creating. If you're holding empowerment, the desire and willingness to have someone else have the tools and the skills to solve their own problem, if you're holding that empowerment within your toolbox or the pool in which you're doing this situation, that should help to mitigate the desire for me to fix it for you. You haven't got a fish, I'll go out and get a fish.
Yeah.
So
otherwise, I think you're at the point which Andrew was talking about earlier, which is they're just going to suck every bit of energy out of you. So you have to be stand back and just say, I'll give you what I can when you're ready for it. Otherwise, they're just going to pull everything from you, and then they get in that victim mindset where you have to go and solve that problem. Then you're like, oh shit, now I've really got to, you know, where do you, like you were saying, where do you put those boundaries up at that point? You know what I mean? Because how far deep?
This brings us back to Andy's point. So we had boundaries at the beginning, yeah. Now, it's a privileged perspective to know that you even need to put boundaries up, and I think you only truly understand the boundary when you understand what not a boundary is. So as you're approaching someone to speak to them, how much do you need to be aware of their capacity or tendency or potential for them to vampiritically, and if someone can give me a better word than that, I would love it, leach that energy out. Someone once said people are either radiators or drain pipes. They either warm you up or they suck everything away. And I think that people can change all the time. I don't think you're inherently one or the other, but it's just where you're at with whatever might be being discussed. So how do we think about that? If we're going into someone to ask a question, two completely same people, we can see that they're in, we'll use that same example, some sort of negative debt cycle, and it's impacting their life, or you deem it to be impacting their life, and you're going in to ask a question. When do you start to think about how willing is this person? If I do start to help, how willing is this person to receive my help and empower themselves versus suck my energy? Andy?
I was just about thinking a couple of instances that people that I've encountered, that you tell them how to do something or how they can help themselves, but then there's some people that they just rather you do it for them over and over again. They just seem just completely incapable of taking that step to help themselves. And this is, I think, where you were saying they're just leeching the energy, they're just draining the energy from you because you're constantly doing what they need getting done, things like filling forms out for them, and you're telling them what to put on the form, the simple basics, you tick yes or no. But there's some people are just not even capable of doing that. They want you to fill the form out for them even, or take them to the job centre, the life centre, or whatever Citizens Advice Bureau. You have to hold the hand in some instances, because I don't know what it is with some people that they can't, physically or mentally, I don't know what, they're not able to do it for themselves.
You mean they're so disempowered that their only coping mechanism is for you to do it for them? Yeah. So in that instance, if you offered, so you see someone that's in that need, you have wealth, you've got power, you've got resources, you've got all these things, you identify a person or group of people who are in need, you ask questions, you listen, they confirm your assumptions that they are in need, and then in some way or another you offer support in some way, but you quickly identify that they are not willing to empower themselves for whatever reason at this point. Yeah. At what point, and this is where the boundary is, at what point does a person choose to put a boundary up to say, I can't help you anymore? Well, actually, there's an assumption there. Is that right? Is there a point where you say, I cannot help you? And if that is right, when do you choose to put that boundary up? And if you think it's not right, then what do you do?
It's just slowly backing off. It's literally just gradually backing off, so that they do try and they sort of build up that bit of empowerment themselves by slowly reducing the amount of time that you're spending on them, with them.
And if you could see that person was not building up empowerment, that actually the more you back off, the more that you just see them just reaching out with their hand for needing more support, and it pulls at those heartstrings.
Yeah, that's when I have to ask for help myself.
Okay, yeah, I understand that.
Them. Yeah, that I have to get back up, basically, to also have somebody else come and assist that person, because I can't. As much as I'd love to be able to be the one that can actually help them feel that empowerment and sort themselves out and pick themselves out of the proverbial gutter. Sometimes I need help to get them to that position as well.
I suppose this comes down to the question, is it okay to leave a man behind? And there's the old story of, you know, would you kill a baby to save 1 million people? And it's a really, again, it's one of those existential questions. And I would just, does anyone even by show of hands know, just so they could seriously answer that, who would kill one life to save 10,000 or 1 million? No? Okay, don't shake hands. So who absolutely wouldn't? Okay, that's cool. I think Christina's not available at the minute. Like, I've thought about this loads, and my end result is I would, but I tell you what, I fluctuate between it so many times. Who has the right to? John, do you want to say something on that?
I was going to say, who gets to decide which people are capable of making that decision? So it gets very complicated, and especially when the people that are perhaps least appropriate to make those decisions are the ones that want to.
Well, I'll give you the one that came up in a workshop we did. You are an ostracized group of people. You're hiding in a house. There's 10 of you under the floorboard. You're holding your child in your arms, and the people are up above the floorboards trying to find you. The baby's about to make some noise. If it here's the baby, it will kill all of you. Would you kill the baby? It's your choice. It's your child. It's a
difficult choice, but and when the problem is we're not in that situation, so we're not in it regularly. If you were in that situation regularly, you would come to terms with those decisions and you would make them. It's because we live in a privileged society where we don't actually need to think about those things very often, and we get very abstract about it. But if you're in the middle of a war, people make those decisions.
Because the war becomes normal, becomes neutral, becomes everyday.
You have to make those decisions sometimes.
So let's bring it back then to our actions and our points here. So we've got understanding who you're getting involved with as much as you can do before you do so. This is through the listening. I feel we didn't really get, we haven't got to an answer on this point whereby it's somewhere about boundaries. When is the right time to put well, you obviously should, I think my opinion is you should have your boundaries up from the beginning and understanding where they are. But as a person or group of people who gets close to those boundaries, where they begin to go back to Alan's point, where they're beginning to take from your cup and you're trying to mitigate what Andy was sharing earlier, where all of a sudden you then need to go and get some help. How do you begin to sever or create space between yourself and that person safely, so that, well, I want to say so that they're not more disempowered, but if they were more disempowered, is that your responsibility? Richard?
I think I'd just say, the way I've, I think we've obviously all been in this situation, good and bad, I think. And I think you probably fail at it more than you get it right, sort of thing. But I think what I've kind of learned, having employed people and tried to pull them through this, tried to support them through things they say they want to do, and then do they do it or not? And both with friends and other people as well, is I think the only thing you can do is you say, well, you have to still understand what it is they want to achieve, rather than, because quite often they'll come to you with a specific thing. I've got this problem. It's usually a bit of detail, like Andy said, it fill in a form or whatever it might be, whatever extreme. But it's like, well, what is it you really need help with? And I think it's like moving a couple of levels up so you actually understand what the overall objective is. But I think ultimately, from a tactical point of view, when you're trying, whether you want to disengage with them or not, it's kind of say, the only thing I've found to do is say, well, you're asking me, now we understand where you're trying to go. This is a step on this journey. This action would be a step on this journey. Using the fishing analogy, go and do this thing, and when you've done it, come back to me and we'll talk about how you feel about it, or whether it's worked, whether it's not worked. And it's kind of like creating actions for people to go and do. And if they don't do it, and at that point, it's like, well, if you haven't done, might come back to you and say, well, blah, 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 what about this over here? It's like, well, we've talked about it, and this is the next logical step. So if you do this, we can move forward. If you don't, then we're kind of stuck, aren't we? Because you need to keep the dialogue open, but it's like, here's something that I think will help. Now you've got a choice whether what you do with that or not. Really, you have to be brutal at some point with it,
But what you're doing there is you're allowing them to make sure that they understand what they're doing, to take action, and if they don't, at least then it will become clear.
You create a boundary at that point. Yeah, you've created a boundary that says, well, if you don't, it's not like you're trying to say, if you don't do this, then I'm not going to help you. You have to be very careful with that. But it's like, look, we need you to move forward. Otherwise, I'm just doing stuff for you here, and it isn't going to do any of us any good, is it?
Well, I'd like to. It's not even we need you to move forward. It's you want to move forward, because that would be identified through the listening and through the questions.
Yeah.
This is the next step to do. And so then at some point, if that person comes back and is consistently not carrying out that process, then you could either choose
asking different questions or come from a different angle if you've got that in you. So,
Daniel, this reminds me of a coach that we once had, and he was saying that the way that he operates with his kids and everyone is, when somebody comes with a problem, it's like, okay, so what have you already done? And he's looking for them to have already tried one or two things, right? And it's like, and if they haven't, then it's like, okay, well, what's your best thinking? Like, how, if let's talk about it right now. So you're immediately empowering that person to put their best thinking down. And that was one thing that we learned from Roger and Michelle, right? Like, best thinking, of being able to, because everyone's got a best thought, it might not be the next move or whatever, but anyone can think of what the next best thing is. And I think that just automatically creates that boundary right from the off. It's like, don't come to me asking me to solve a problem when you've not even tried yourself, right? So it's immediately empowering them. And I think that's a great idea, Richard. Just giving them a really small step. This is the next thing. You need to call that person, have that conversation, and then it's creating those little incremental empowerment steps where they're building on their own belief in themselves. It's like, okay, I can do that. And it might be, a call might be too much, but maybe they could do some research on the internet, or maybe they could go and get and buy an online course, or maybe it could be something that doesn't involve another person, the human, but it's just kind of finding what is their next step that them and all parts in their system is comfortable with. And then, they can take it from there. But
well, you can even break it down to the point where you can say, I need you to just go to that shop and get a form, or go on the website, print out a form.
Yeah.
Because that way someone can come back to go, I'm still struggling with this. Okay, well, let's take this one task and break it down into 4 micro tasks. Now, at some point, you might have to exert that boundary, and a person's consistently not. But I suppose you make your own judgment call on that. But what we're really gathering from this bit here is that when you're then operating with someone, is it's all right us saying empower them, but that is, again, it's such a subjective loaded sentence. Like, how does one empower oneself? Because I could think I'm doing it and not get there. Go on, Christina, finish that off, then I'm going to come to Kirsty.
I think it's important as well that each of us are cultivating that self energy of, like, really being able to approach people with compassion, and being able to meet them where they're at without judging them, because if people feel judged, that is really disempowering. So that is also an art and a skill, I feel, of being able to get to that point where actually, it's okay that you can't do that, or that's you're not there yet, or whatever it might be, and to be able to approach that with real grounded centeredness as an individual as well. I think that's important. And then Kirsty can say that thing.
Okay, brilliant. I'm just typing that up. Kirsty?
Yeah, totally agree with all of that. I was going to say, our society is so based on the victim triangle. I mean, I've just been reading so much about the victim triangle for the last couple of months, because I couldn't work out what it was that I was stuck in. I was in something and I didn't know what it was. I just couldn't work it out. and just stuck in so many different levels. And finally I sussed it and realized it was the victim. So it's just victim consciousness, and that's what 3D is. That's what we have been, that's what we're coming out of. So we're coming out of the victim consciousness, and victim consciousness is the drama triangle. The drama triangle is that we're either in victim, or we're in rescuer, or we're in attacker. And when we're in that system, everyone who's in the system, well, a very vast percentage of everyone in that system is in one of those three at different points. Even the people behind the desks who are trying to help people, whenever there's an expectation, then it becomes that we want to rescue someone, and we want to make it that we expect they're going to be able to do it, because we want them to be better, because we want their lives to be better, because who decided what the better is? Do you know what I mean? So we've just decided that, and that's what society has been based on. That's what the government system is about, like us, them, like they are against us, we are victims, and then we need to rescue all these other people out of that victim triangle. But potentially the biggest thing that we can do as the person who, like Christina was saying before, when a healer feels exhausted, then the ego's got in the way. I mean, that's not how Christina put it, but essentially it's that we have decided that we need the other person, or we have an expectation of where the other person should be, instead of, if I'm going to do this and I don't expect you to go anywhere. I'm going to give you the next steps. And if you take them or you don't take them, that's entirely up to you. And it won't make any difference to me if you do or you don't, because I'm here to share the next steps. I'm here to share this moment with you. What you do with this moment is entirely up to you. But this is the moment that I'm sharing in. And then beyond that, I let you go. And it's major. Like, I hadn't realized quite how vast the victim triangle is, and how, like, I see it in all my friends, I see it in family. Everyone's trying to rescue someone. If then, what we do is we flip. So we go from rescuer, let me rescue you. And then when you don't want to be rescued, then I get annoyed. So I get annoyed because you didn't take my advice. I get annoyed because you took my advice, but you didn't do exactly what I said that you needed to do. Or you didn't take my advice at all. You did something completely different, and you're back here again. So now I feel like my advice wasn't wisdom. I feel like my advice wasn't heard. I don't feel heard. So that starts to happen. So we go from like the victim, and then the rescuer becomes the victim. And then we go around the triangle again, and everyone's going through that triangle.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I typed something earlier and this is linked to it. So I want to stick on this conversation for the last 10 minutes, because what I wrote down was, and I'm bringing Alan's name into this because I think when we put a word to it and a person to it, it has more ness. So if Alan has lots of money and helps lots of people, so let's say he ticks all these boxes that we've been working through, and someone else who has nothing or less judges Alan and says Alan is selfish. Look at him with all of that resources. He's got all this time, all this money, whatever he might have. Look at him with his cup full. How does Alan then deal with that? Who has the right to say someone is selfish, or to use the word Alan used earlier, corrupted? Or he was all about being good, but now he's got to this level, he's not really helping the younger person. Now, in that instance, the person saying that's in victim. But it could be very easy for Alan or anybody to react and either go into persecutor or to go into rescuer to then want to counteract that. So throughout all of this, there's an element that if you're not aware of that victim triangle, if you can't find self energy to be totally cool with accusations, then you could end up being caught back in it. And to go back to what Andy said earlier, all of a sudden, before you know it, you are giving way more than you can give. And then you suddenly wake up one day and you're like, right, I need to back off again.
It always comes back to nothing is personal. I mean, like, nothing is personal because that person said that about, said it about anyone. It's not personal. So if the person that it's said about decides to take it personally, then it's because they believe it, or they believe there's something in there that's true. We don't get angry about anything unless we believe it. We don't get really upset unless there's a twinge of truth in there and they've struck a chord.
Then in that instance, if someone has struck a chord, then that is a gift, because you then have found the tiny little bit that you get to work on. Yeah.
Always. Everything that's happening at every single point of our life is only a direct reflection of what is already in us. We're just seeing, we're seeing who we are. Everything that comes up for us has come from the external to validate exactly who we are on the internal.
Which then allows us to raise our own personal consciousness to go on our own little loop back to what we're talking about here with actions. So then through being aware of that, and actually through helping others, but practicing not taking it personally, not being attached to what they say, in the instances where you do take it personally and you do get hurt by what they say, that then allows you a window in. But then you use your consciousness that you've been cultivating and developing to then not get sucked into that, but to heal, which then expands your consciousness. So then in theory, help you next time, help with less attachment to what people say.
But also there is no helping. Like we're not here to help. I thought we were here to help.
That's a good, we talked about this last week.
I thought I was here to help. I am definitely not here to help. And it brings us back to what you were saying at the beginning of the call, which is like, in my opinion, the highest good, like whatever good is, but the highest path that we can take in this lifetime is to do what it is that we absolutely love doing. That's the highest path. That's like the best path we can take, to do what it is that brings us joy, that lights us up, that turns us into, the thing that we feel passionate about. That's what we need to do. And what we end up having is so many people in the helping sector who are trying to help, but it just becomes the victim cycle, and it doesn't get us out of it. And we are perpetuating the victim cycle by being victims, perpetrators, or rescuers in our own life. So all we can do is heal that in ourselves.
This goes back to, I think it was 2 calls ago when we had that big discussion around teacher and helping, and where we got to was that all you can do is in every moment is share your gift, whatever that might be, and that's it. How that's received, what someone does with it, everything else actually has nothing to do with you. If they choose to take it personally and call you an idiot, then that's fine. How you deal with them calling you an idiot is your own inner growth. They're almost, you could say, 2 completely separate worlds. They're meeting in that moment. There's a Vesica Pisces made of a situation, of a now, and then as soon as that now's finished, it's separate. So this is a really beautiful kind of end then, and we're going to start to just wrap up now, so that through all of this, because I'm going to take it back to what Alan said at the beginning, how do you give to others, which could easily be taken another way in terms of how do you help others, and even to give to others you could argue if all you were doing is giving to others, then no one could ever judge you. You're just giving. But it's this whole thing of in every moment sharing your gift. And if all you are being and doing is what you feel you were there to do, what lights you up. John talked earlier about do what makes your heart tingle, or something like that. Like do something that literally makes your heart feel alive. If all you are doing is all of that, then one could argue, if you've practiced that enough, that everything around boundaries, everything around, to a point, even the empowerment of others, all of those things become unnecessary. Because the only reason we have that whole of the list is because the ego got us in the way, and the ego wants to help, and so we then suddenly go, oh, we're doing all these things for the right reason, but actually they're just creating a fuck up. Whereas if we sit in, all I can do right now is give my gift. How it's received and taken,
That's exactly it.
Out of my control. So
I just want to say that I love this conversation. And it's so true, right? It's just give and create and be in whatever essence feels good for you in that moment, and be totally cool with whatever that is, whether or not nobody receives it, whether or not a billion people receive it. Like, that isn't our choice, right? That's for spirit to decide. So yeah.
because it's not your job to fix. I was going to say it's not your job to fix everything. It's not your job to fix anything.
That's it. It's like the ego wants to be the savior. It's like the ego wants that recognition of going, oh, I fixed so and so, even if you wouldn't say it in that way. It's like, oh, so and so said that I was really helpful, and then your ego glows. You can feel that ego glow, and actually, it's like beautiful. I'm really glad that you took something from my words, from my music, from my art, from my whatever it might be. That's beautiful. And that's it. Like, there isn't anything after that. It's just beautiful.
So I'm going to go back to Alan's. I'm really conscious of time, but I'm going to go back to Alan's statement then at the beginning and actually really challenge the whole thing. And I want to hold what we've just talked about there, which is, if all you can do, truly, after all of this comment, if all you can do is share your gift, whatever that gift is, at whatever level, whatever anything is, if all you can do is share your gift, then is it even possible to be selfish? Because the beginning was, how does one balance looking after one's own resources so that you have a full cup within which to give without veering into selfishness? But all of that is wrapped around really the darker side of the ego that we don't want to go into. So how do I not do that? Whereas if all you are is sat in true love for yourself, love for others, and to know that in every single now moment, right now, all I can do is share my gift, whatever that is, whatever level, to whomever, and have no attachment to how it's received. Is it even possible to be selfish?
I don't think so. I think also you can't overshare. We can never overshare. We can just, we can try to help, but we can't overshare. How do you overshare? You've only got what you've got. Do you know what I mean? So if I've got my gift and I share my gift to the world, I can't ever overshare it and feel exhausted. But if I have an expectation when I'm sharing my gift and I don't receive back what I wanted from sharing my gift,
I feel depleted.
But if I'm sharing just for the joy of, look, I've just made some music and here you go, have it. Here's my music. And then trusting that spirit and consciousness in the world is going to give back, because as I give, the world mirrors me back. When there's no expectation, but it's the expectation. So the ego goes, ooh, let me just give this out there and I will get X, Y, Z back. And then when we don't get it, we're back in the victim triangle. Okay. I tried to rescue and now I'm a victim and now I'm going to attack you. So yeah, we can't overshare.
Okay, can I ask?
Okay, lastly on that one, the boundaries. I've just recently realized that boundaries, I don't want to trigger with my words, I have to be really careful, but
you're only sharing, it's not your responsibility.
I'm sharing, there you go, I don't need to worry about it. But here, I just think boundaries are bullshit. That's what I think. I think that boundaries, and I used to think boundaries were really important after I thought I didn't have any. Now I've realized that boundaries are basically where I draw a line and say to you, if you step over this line, I'm going to be really upset. I'm going to get really angry if you step over this line that I've drawn. But actually, if I deal with what's on the other side of the line that I've drawn, I can't be upset. I can't overshare with you. I can't. It doesn't happen. Because all I'm saying with a boundary is the shit that I haven't sorted out, the stuff I haven't healed. And I'm going to allow you to go into that place if I overshare. But actually, it's just that we haven't healed it yet.
Do you want to know the irony of what you just said?
Probably.
You're the person who told me about boundaries.
There you go.
And you didn't, and you told me, because I remember you saying, I don't need to learn them. And so I just found that quite funny. All right, I just want everyone on the call to do me a favor and to just kind of just shake your shoulders for a minute. And then collectively just kind of take a deep breath in Hold it at the top and just lift your shoulders, roll it back, and then let it out with a bit of a noise. I'm going to do that one more time. Breathing in, lifting your shoulders up as you're breathing in, pausing at the top, rolling your shoulders, and then letting it out with a sigh. And if you want to, you can put your arms in the air and just shake them like that for a minute. Well, I wrote like 20 lines around the things that would give us a toolbox for the very deep question that Alan brought up there. And it seems to all be summarized in one line, which is you can only share and you can't overshare. Now, I'm going to expand that when I paste that into the group, because I think that's one of those things that, like, you'll end up with a yogi saying you, and you walk away and you're like, I haven't got a clue what you just said. So I think it needs a little bit of an expansion. Like, you know, how do I not empty my cup? Just share and do not overshare. Right. But I in my heart, I agree. And just over a minute, I'm just curious, does anyone fundamentally disagree with that after we've spent this time just unpacking the back end of it? Okay. And
I don't disagree, but I definitely feel resistance.
okay, this is good. This is good. Well, because of time, what I would love is if you can continue the conversation with me in a minute, because I'd love to just know what the resistance is, because we might be able to put that back into the group to see, because that will be a mirror of collective resistance as well. So it'd be very interesting to find out what that is. So I'm going to just call that to a pause there. So this whole conversation was basically around, like, how does one give without having the piss taken out of us effectively? And at the same time, how do I accumulate resources or time or effort or energy or money, whatever it might be, and not become corrupted by that? And at the same time, help people. And we went around the houses, and what we uncovered from that was we split that into two parts. We had, how does one not become selfish or corrupted? And from that, we learned that it's around consciousness, to see that you're part of a whole, to want to benefit and help society for the highest and greatest good. And at the same time, whilst doing so, is around empowerment and helping others to grow, but having enough consciousness to make sure that how you're helping them is of benefit. We then expanded and went into empowerment. Well, then, if you're empowering, how do you do that? And we came about a big conversation around asking questions and listening, and then breaking down answers to not help, but to offer enough insight that they can go away and do something with that, and kind of being there for them to come back so that they can come and can ask. And then from all of that, from those two sides, which is around selfishness and corruption and empowerment, from all of that, where we got to was that to not get this feedback and to not get this feedback loop of murkiness, it's not even that you're helping them, you're just sharing. Now, it's easy for an observer to see that you're sharing and think you're helping, because on paper, they will look exactly the same. But the difference is where it's coming from. And if we can come from that space within us where you fundamentally know that it is not my job to help everyone, it's not my job to help anyone. All I can do in that moment, to use what John and Kirsty and a few others said, all I can do in that moment is to come from my heart. That's it. All I can do in that moment, in any moment, is to do things that light me up, that fill me up, that make me feel wonderful, that make me feel like this is why I came here to do. And if I'm fortunate enough to be somewhere where I share that benefits someone, then that is wonderful. And if I'm not, then that's okay too. And if that person's not ready to receive it, that's okay. It's not my job to make them receive anything. And anytime that we feel anything other than that, anytime that we feel shitty, that they felt shitty, anytime that we're not happy that they didn't receive it, anytime that they didn't do it, that actually is a window and a mirror for us to look back and go, oh, there's a little bit within me that just needs to be healed, because that's where the ego's coming in, expecting a result. And for as long as we expect anything, we're basically setting ourselves up for suffer, pain and failure, because how can we expect anything of anyone? That's their journey of their growth. So all of this comes all the way back to sitting in that space with self-energy, with compassion, and to just be who you are in your fullest expression, and to just share in every single now moment. And for as long as we do that, we'll never feel that we are being selfish.
Can I add one tiny thing to that?
Of course you can, Kirsty. We are finishing now. Go on.
It's really important.
Go on.
We only share because there's a joy in sharing. Because if we're not feeling the joy of sharing, then we're not sharing. So we can't overshare if we are sharing in the joy of sharing. Like, I am so joyful to be able to share with you. Like Andrea did a session with me this week, you know, where she just shared her knowledge on investments, and I loved that sharing. Do you know what I mean? So it's that kind of, you can't overshare if you're doing it in joy. But as soon as we're not feeling the joy, then we're not sharing anymore. We're trying to help, or we're expecting, or something else is going on. Sorry. That was that.
That's okay. That's cool. That's so cool. I'm going to pause that there.
I just want to know if we answered Alan's question.
I was going to come to Alan then. I hope to God Alan's actually behind that. He is. There we go. Alan.
He is here. I've loved your discussion. I've been distracted because I've been doing a lot of other things, so I'm actually going to listen to the repeat.
It's a good job we recorded it.
I have really enjoyed it, and I think that has covered a lot more ground than I expected it to, and it's given me perspectives on issues in my own life that I did not expect to gain perspectives on from this discussion. So, you know, personal matters as opposed to financial matters, or helping the world matters, you know, community matters. So yeah, that's been really, really interesting and very, very valuable. And thank you to everyone who's contributed. And I'm really looking forward to listening back when I can actually give it my full attention. So thank you, all of you.
Well, thank you. Well, everything that came about today, guys, only came about because Alan had the bravery, in a way, and vulnerability to be able to pause and ask that question. I can come up with questions every week, but they're just me sat pondering, amusing things. There's nothing more chunky and worthwhile to unpack than something that's real for somebody. And usually if it's real for somebody, it's real for all of us, because I can definitely tell you this. I've loved this call. And this has really got me thinking about actually the number of times where I help or thinking I'm sharing, but really like, what am I coming from and where does it come from? So I will always do a quick check whenever we've been talking about stuff like this, is please raise your hand if you're leaving feeling better and okay with things, or some sort of heart or something. Oh yeah, okay, good. Alan's okay, got right, brilliant. That's what I want to check. I think it's a better question than who's feeling shitty, because generally I think they wouldn't put their hand up. So that is good. That's what I want to hear. Really thank you everyone for coming and joining these calls. We're moving and going as we go along with them, and and there's nothing I enjoy more seriously than collective sense making. I think it's just I'm definitely in joy anyway, can put it that way. So we will be doing a crypto call next week, crypto and investments, and we'll be back with another one of these in 2 weeks. Bring your questions, guys, because bring your real life situations, because we're all human beings and we're pretty much probably all got the same problems. And if we don't, we can at least share in joy with our experience. So take what you've learned today, listen to the recording if you want to, share with others. The more of us on these calls, the more human beings that we're able to share with. And ultimately then, hopefully, the idea is that a rising tide lifts all boat for all of humanity. And we get to be in more joy collectively and individually forever and ever. Take care, everyone. Have a blessed evening. My name's been Daniel. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.